seed.
Joined now by the Federal Liberal Party Treasurer and Deputy Liberal Leader, Josh Frydenberg. Welcome to the panel. An absolute electoral slaughter for the Victorian Liberal Party. How culpable are your colleagues in Canberra for this?
Well, it's a very difficult night for the Liberal family, and I do want to pay credit to Matthew Guy and the campaign that he and his colleagues ran, in particular my friend on the panel tonight, John Pizzuto. But as Matthew said, this was a state election run on state issues, and it's worth bearing in mind that no first-term Victorian government with a majority for that term has lost in 100 years in this state. And
there
so
were
it's
lots
really
of
important.
ones, but this is not just a win.
But if you go back, well,
this is a wipeout of the opposition.
Well, it's very clear from the numbers that Daniel Andrews had a very strong result. But if you go back to 2002, and John will remember it well, a re-elected Brax government had a 8.5% swing to it, and the coalition lost 19 seats. So we have seen these swings in Victoria, but from a federal perspective, we've also noted that we won the last two state elections in South Australia and in Tasmania, and Scott Morrison and I and other federal colleagues didn't play an active role in this campaign, and it was fought on state-based
because Matthew Guy did not want Scott Morrison next to him.
You were at the campaign, for example, and Scott Morrison wasn't there at the launch.
Well, Scott Morrison, as you know, made a visit to Pellegrini's with Matthew Guy and paid their respects in the light of that tragic terrorist attack in Melbourne. But this election was fought on state-based issues, namely congestion and infrastructure, law and order, health and education.
Even though both John Pizzuto, Jane Hume and Matthew Guy himself have pointed to the Muppet Show, using the Prime Minister's very own words there in Canberra, not being helpful to the Victorian Liberal Party vote. You're saying completely the opposite. What
I'm saying is, well, the noise didn't help, but it didn't determine the outcome. And this election was fought on state-based issues. And if Bill Shorten wants to get ahead of himself and think that he can measure up the drapes in the lodge, then he'll be as wrong next time around as he was in 2016 when he did his famous victory lap around the country thinking he'd won that election. OK, what does this mean for your colleague, Sarah Henderson, in seats like Corangamite, a 0.03% margin? Other eastern suburb seats, Chisholm, vacated very noisily by a very unhappy Julia Banks. A string of other marginal seats, federal marginal seats. Surely they'd have to be very, very worried tonight. Well, we've got a lot of work to do here in Victoria and across the country, and the Prime Minister and I and all our colleagues are very, very conscious of that. But at the same time, the Australian economy is strong. We've got an agenda that we're prosecuting, and we know that the coalition has a very strong track record, and we're presenting to the people at the next election very strong policies.
You've only got about 6 months, though, Josh Frydenberg. Do you think you can turn it around in that shorter period of time?
Well, they say a week's a long time in politics, so 6 months is an eternity.
Both of your colleagues here at the other end of the panel are bemoaning the fact that the Liberal Party is tearing itself apart. The Conservative wing is at war with the Progressive wing, the small L Liberal wing, particularly here in Victoria. That needs to change, surely, from their perspective, as they have argued. What do you think?
Well, Matthew Guy had enormous unity in his team for 4 years. I mean, I think that's worth pointing out. And it's a real credit to him and his colleagues. At the end of the day, that didn't carry them to victory tonight, that's obvious. But the issues within the Liberal Party are no different than issues within the Labor Party. And they tend to be more around personalities in the Liberal Party than the sort of hard-nosed
the Labor Party
factions in the Labor Party.
Has knifed a leader in recent times.
I like that little caveat, in recent times. I mean, Bill Shorten has had his hand in a number of knifings himself. Around that Lazy Susan in the local Asian restaurant.
No, but seriously, Josh Frydenberg, there are calls, people like Mary Wooldridge and others, Jeff Kennett, have called for Michael Kroger, the state president, in the interests of accountability, somebody wearing this result, to quit. Should Michael Kroger step down as state party president?
No, Michael Kroger is the elected president of the Liberal Party.
Who has presided over a mammoth electoral defeat.
I have a great deal of respect for Michael. And as for what he does at the next State Council and whether or not he seeks another term is completely a matter for him. But I don't think you want to point the finger at any one particular person in the organisational wing for a loss in a state election.
Who does wear the blame then?
Well, obviously, there's going to need to be a proper review, as any party does after an election result, even more so after election results such as we've seen as tonight, and I'll leave that to wiser heads to conduct.
We're expecting to cross to Liberal Party HQ shortly. Have you been in touch with Matthew Guy this evening?
I spoke to him last night, and obviously been speaking to a lot of our other state colleagues and federal colleagues through the course of this evening, but I will be in touch with Matthew, and I have a great deal of respect for him, for his capacity, but also for his character.
What would you expect that we might learn of his immediate future in the coming hours?
Again, these are matters for him, and obviously, you know, right now he's not feeling that great. He probably needs a good night to sleep on it before making any decisions.
We're just going to get down to South Barwon in just a moment, but when you see seats, jewels in the Liberal Party crown, like Sandringham, like Brighton, very much in the gun tonight, Hawthorn, although John Pizzuto's not conceding, it's looking
and he shouldn't concede because there's pre-polls coming in and postals.
OK, but we're seeing very blue ribbon seats in the east. Your natural territory flipping tonight. Does that make your stomach turn as a Liberal?
Well, obviously, we want to hold those seats like Hawthorn, like Sandringham and others in that sandbelt that we did hold until we lost them at the last election. So we need to refocus after this result. It's a tough night for the Liberal family, but like all strong, durable parties, we'll bounce back.
OK, let's head